Welcome to the Leading Edge Podcast with Eric Thompson.
Inspire, perform, profit.
What's going on, everybody? It's your good friend Eric. Welcome to the Leading Edge Podcast, episode number 31, which is inspired by the Leadville 100 bike race. This episode is entitled 8 hours and 52 minutes. So here's the thing. Every August, the Leadville 100 bike race is held. It was just recently held, and so I was inspired to tell you the story of two different Leadville 100s that I raced about 10 years ago. So I did not race this year. I raced it last 10 years ago, and it's an interesting, I think, and an inspirational story. So I'm going to tell you that story. So first, how about a little bit about this bike race? So the Leadville Trail 100 bike race, no surprise, is held in Leadville, Colorado. No surprise, it's 100 miles long. Hence the name, the Leadville Trail 100. The nickname of the race is the Race Across the Sky, because this race is famous for its altitude. It's famous for the elevations that it reaches, starting with the starting line, Leadville, Colorado. I'm guessing a lot of you have been there before, but the starting line is over 10,000 feet. So Leadville, Colorado sits at just over 10,000 feet. So that's where this race starts and also ends. It climbs to as high as just under 13,000 feet. By the way, if you've ever raced this yourself, reach out to me and let me know. I'd love to hear your story about your race. So this race has gotten really popular. It's been run for a long, long time, many, many years. But starting about 10 years ago, like about the time that I raced it for the first time, it started to reach this whole new level of popularity where big time international caliber bike racers would come to the little town of Leadville to race this race. And actually the second year that I did it, Lance Armstrong raced the race. This year, there were several like Tour de France caliber racers who were in this little, that's now become a big mountain bike race in this little town in Colorado. So it's kind of become a big deal. Now it's really challenging because it's so long, right? So you're racing 100 miles at this kind of an altitude. It's really challenging. So the best of the best, like the elite people who race the race, the winners of the race will do this in about 6.5 hours. Usually, when you look at the finish times, there'll be just a handful of people, like 3 or 4 people who are under 7 hours. And then you're very elite if you can be under 8 hours, and then, kind of it expands from there. So the big deal about this race is to get under 9 hours. So if you're not out to win it, like when I raced it, certainly I was not out to win it. There was no way I was going to beat, Tour de France caliber racers. If you're not out to win it, the next big deal, the next big milestone is to get under 9 hours. So if you finish under 9 hours, what you get is, I think, one of the coolest trophies in all of sports. What you get is a belt buckle. And it's not like this tiny little measly belt buckle. It's like this big, like cowboy style. It's silver with like this gold border on it and these big letters, Leadville Trail 100 finisher, and it acknowledges that you finished the race under 9 hours. So in like the bike racing world, it's a huge deal to have one of these belt buckles. So for like aspiring racers like me, people who are, amateurs who maybe have reached a certain like above average level of fitness, that becomes a big goal if you race this race, is to get under 9 hours. So I'm going to tell you the story of two of my races. Let's start with 2008. So 2008, I'm living in Breckenridge, Colorado. And the advantage of living in Breckenridge, if you're going to race the Leadville Trail 100, is that you're living at about 9,000 feet. So the thing with altitude training and getting acclimated is that if you were to come from sea level to altitude, it takes your body at least 4 days to have any kind of meaningful effect to make any kind of a meaningful difference in terms of your ability to deal with that altitude. So what happens is when you go to altitude, your body creates more red blood cells to carry more oxygen around your body, and it takes 4 days for your body to kind of catch up and make enough red blood cells to even make a little bit of a difference. But the real deal is it takes your body really 3 weeks to become fully acclimated. So if you were an aspiring bike racer living, I don't know, in Miami, Florida, and you want to come race the Leadville 100, well, you need to get to Leadville at least 4 days before the race. Even better, get there 3 weeks before the race so that your body can become used to the altitude. Like if you just show up from sea level, you're going to have a big problem. So my huge advantage was that I was living at altitude. I was there for way longer than 3 weeks, right? So I'm living at 9,000 feet. That was a huge advantage. Plus I was riding my bike and racing my bike all the times before we had kids. And, I'm living right there in the mountains. So I rode my bike all the time. I was racing my bike a lot. And so I signed up for the Leadville 100. And actually you have to get in through a lottery. So got in through the lottery and I'm training. I'm getting ready for the Leadville 100. And I will tell you, I was thinking that finishing under 9 hours was like a sure thing. All right. I was thinking that I had it in the bag. This was going to be no problem. I got this. I'm going to finish this thing under 9 hours. There's actually a funny picture of me at the starting line where they ask people to kind of self-select and put yourself at the starting line based on where you think you're going to finish, because they want the faster riders toward the front of the pack at the starting line, because that will make things just flow a whole lot better when the race starts, to have the faster riders toward the front, the slower riders toward the back. So they put up these signs that designate your estimated finish time, and they want you to be near those signs, again, so that the faster riders are toward the front. So there's a picture of me that Julie took. I'm standing at this sign that says sub 9 hours, and I'm kind of smugly smiling and pointing at the sign and looking at the camera like, yeah, I got this. I'm going to finish under 9 hours. Well, I'll fast forward to the end of the story. I did not finish under 9 hours. So here's what happens. So the gun goes off. The race starts at 6:30 in the morning. Gun goes off, and I'm about maybe 45 minutes, not an hour, so somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour into the race, and I get a flat tire. All right, so getting a flat tire during a big bike race like this, of course, is no fun. It's a huge bummer, and it became an even bigger bummer because I could not get my flat tire fixed. It was like this comedy of errors. Thing after thing kept happening. My pump didn't work, and I had to borrow someone's pump, and I still cannot get the tire inflated. And what I later figured out was that the spare tube that I carried, was defective. All right, I had a bad spare tube with me. And you mountain bike racer aficionados out there, you big mountain bike riders, you may be wondering, well, why wasn't I riding tubeless? Well, the next year I finally transitioned to tubeless, but that year I was not riding tubeless. I had tubes in my tires, and the tube went flat. The spare tube I had with me was defective, so the tire would not inflate. So now I'm 45 minutes, an hour-ish into the race. I've wasted a ton of time fooling around with this tire. It's still not inflated. So now what I have to do, I have to get myself to the next aid station where Julie is waiting for me. I know, with a little bag of spare parts and tools and spare tubes. I have to get there, but it's many miles away. So now I'm having to walk and run my bike, starting with one of the steepest descents in the whole course. I'm having to walk down the steep descent on my bike because my tire is deflated. Finally get to the bottom of this descent, and I'm trying to kind of halfway ride my bike and walk my bike. It's not working out, and this guy thankfully rides by me, notices the problem I'm having, and says, "Hey man, what's going on?" I tell him I have, my tube is defective, I can't get inflated. He said, I'll help you out, I have an extra tube. So thank goodness for this guy. This guy helped me out with an extra tube. But you know what? After all that, I was now an hour and a half behind where I needed to be. All this fooling around took me an hour and a half. So I finally get to this aid station. Julie's there. She's like, what the heck is going on? You are here way later than I thought you would be. I tell her my tale of woe, the tube that won't inflate, on and on. And so now the reality is there is no way on earth I'm going to get under 9 hours. So you know what? I guess I could have quit. I didn't really consider quitting. I could have quit, but man, I felt so disappointed. I was so disappointed because, again, I thought I had this thing in the bag. I thought I was going to get this done under 9 hours, but I kind of write off onto the next part of the course, super frustrated, really down, can't believing that this happened to me. I'm thinking, my goodness, how could this have happened? This had never happened to me in a bike race or bike ride before. And so over the next, whatever it was, maybe 75 or 80 miles, I guess I kind of worked through the 7 stages of grief, where you're angry and denial, or, whatever the order those go in. So by the time I got to the finish line, I had decided that I was going to come back the next year. And so that year, the first year I did it, my finish time was 10 and a half hours. So 10 and a half hours and nowhere near the sub 9 hours, and just kind of had my butt handed to me. And, what I figured out was my arrogance and my smugness going into the race, thinking I had it in the bag. Well, that didn't work out. So you know what happened? I got back into the race. Luckily, I got into the lottery again, and I trained even harder. I was even more prepared in that I thought through all the contingencies, all the things that may happen. So I had way more backstops and protections in place. And yes, even, I carried an extra tube with me. I had spare parts on me just in case that same kind of thing were to happen again. I thought things through way more. And mostly, guys, the biggest difference, not only was I in better shape the following year, better prepared, but the biggest difference is that I was way more humble. I was way more humble going into that race in 2009. And it was this great combination of being humble and also confident. And I think that's a big lesson that I work to carry with me to other parts of my life, other big things that I'm working on in my personal life and my business life. Be humble and also be confident. And I believe that you can be both of those at the same time. So be humble and respectful to the environment and other people and things that may happen to you, and realize that there are a lot of things out of your control, and yet be prepared for those. And it's that preparation that makes you super confident. So I went into that race very humble, very confident. I did not take pictures of me in front of signs that said sub 9 hours. I did not boast to any people that, oh yeah, I got this. I'm gonna finish this thing under 9 hours. I just worked my tail off to get ready, and I mapped out the times I had to hit at each interval of the course at each aid station. So there's several aid stations along the way. I knew exactly the times I had to hit at each one of those aid stations for me to be under 9 hours. What I did is I went back and looked at all the people that had finish times like the time I expected and wanted to have. And I looked at how long it took them to hit each interval along the course. And I memorized those times. So I knew during the day on the race in 2009, I knew the exact times I had to hit those interval stations, those aid stations along the way, in order for me to finish under 9 hours. So what I was doing is I was hitting all those times, and it was just a great feeling to be right on pace to hit those milestones. It was super motivating. I had an amazing ride. It was great weather. Everything went well. I had no issues, no mechanical issues. And you know what? I finished the race, 8 hours, 52 minutes. So still, even with all those things going right for me, even with all the training and preparation, I still basically by the skin of my teeth got it under 9 hours. And I will tell you, those last 15, 20 minutes, half hour were pretty stressful because I knew it was going to be close, right? I knew it was going to be close. I was just praying for nothing to happen like a flat tire like, man, I think I got this, but boy, it's going to be close. Please please let my bike work and no flat tires. I really want that belt buckle. But I finished 8 hours and 52 minutes. I got the buckle. It sits on my desk at my office. And that buckle reminds me of my experience. It reminds me to be humble and confident. It reminds me that I may face challenges during my day, but you know what? With the right preparation and focus, you overcome those challenges. And I'm inspired by the story. So I watch now people that go do that race, and I think, you know what? I did that. I don't need to go back and do it again. I'm off to other challenges. But that's my story of the Leadville 100 and finishing in 8 hours and 52 minutes. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope that you enjoy this podcast. I so appreciate you engaging with this. It means the world to me. I will catch you in the next podcast, and in the meantime, enjoy life on the leading edge.